everybody, my name is Jen and welcome to my channel. I'm really excited. This is my first ever video and I've got lots of content in mind. But to start with, I thought I would just share my testimony with you all. I really want to tell you how I came to know Jesus. I've been walking with Jesus now for 18 years. It's been a really interesting adventure. There's been so much that's happened during that time. There's been some ups and downs, but there's a whole bunch of videos there on its own, so I'm not going to go into that today, but I just want to share with you the very beginning of my journey. So I grew up in a small town in southern England. I actually had anxiety from quite a young age. I remember actually some of my earliest memories were of me being anxious. And I very much remember at school, I always used to struggle at school. I used to feel very uncomfortable around other people and some of my friends. I never really felt completely at ease at school. I don't really ever remember a time when I really enjoyed school. And about the age of 13, I'd got, by this point, I think I better say that I'd always believed in the supernatural. So the supernatural was always something that I believed in. I believed in God. I just wasn't brought up to know God. So my nan would take us to church very occasionally. I went to Sunday school. I don't really have very positive memories of Sunday school. For me, it was just, I went into a room full of other children. And I mean, there were lots of other children at this Sunday school. I don't remember the adults being particularly attentive, and I don't remember the other children being particularly friendly. I don't remember them being unfriendly, but I just remember sitting in the room feeling quite uncomfortable. And so again, that would have come into the, that part of me that struggled with social anxiety. And so yeah, I don't really remember really anything positive about school. I remember hearing things about Jesus. We were taught about Jesus at school. But again, it wasn't something that I was very familiar with. It wasn't something that my family brought me up with or really told me about. My nan didn't even really talk about her faith. So it was just kind of on the periphery of what was going on in my life, effectively. Jesus was this figure that I knew a little bit about, but I didn't really know much about Jesus at all. And so at the age of 13, this guy comes to our school and he's reasonably young, quite trendy looking, if I recall. I don't really remember much else. I think he had blonde hair, and he gets up on the stage in our school assembly and he starts singing these songs and he gives a little talk. I can't remember what he said. I don't really remember what he said, but I know that he invited us to go to one of the church that he was part of that evening. Now, looking back on it now, I know that guy would have been a youth leader. He came, he probably sang, I think they were worship songs. He invited us to church and he said that there was an event happening that evening, and if anybody wanted to go, we were welcome. And so only 2 people that I'm aware of that didn't already go to that church from our school went that evening, and there was myself and there was my brother. We got there, we sat through the talk and he sang some more worship songs, and I remember at the time just being really bowled over with it. I really felt, yeah, I want this. I don't remember what he said. I was 13 years old, but I know he would have given us the gospel. When I look back at it now, he must have given us the gospel. I don't remember the exact words, but that's not true actually. I do remember him saying, if anybody wants to know Jesus, then I invite you now to put your hand up. And I remember he encouraged us all to close our eyes, and I seem to remember him saying, nobody else has to know that you've put your hand up. He said, if you want to know Jesus, I'd like you to close your eyes. Everybody close their eyes now. I think he led us in a moment of prayer, and then he said, if anybody wants to know Jesus, put your hand up and I'll come and speak to you afterwards. Only 2 people in that room put their hands up that night. One was me and the other was my brother. And he came to us at the end, and I remember we went and sat down and he told us, again, he must have given us the gospel. He gave us each a little booklet, he prayed with us, and then he sent us on our way. I'm absolutely sure that he would have invited us back. In fact, I'm pretty sure that's what he did. He invited us back to church. And I remember feeling really good. I was like, wow, I'm going to get to know Jesus. I was really excited, and it just felt right. It felt really right. And then went home. The very next day, I remember my brother woke up, and that was it for him. He felt really uncomfortable the following day and said, I can't do this. I just can't do this. And so for me, it was like, well, I'm going to do it. And it lasted a week. It really did last a week. I remember being kind of all for it, but I was 13 years old. I had nobody to disciple me. I had nobody to really explain to me what it was that I'd done. And if I'm being completely honest, at the age of 13, there were lots of other things going on in my life that were way more important at that moment in time. And I'm not saying they were more important. I just want to clarify that, because clearly they're not. But certainly at that age, I didn't understand really what it was that I'd really been told about Jesus, and actually the importance of what it meant. And boys were very good looking at that time in my life, and my friends were doing things that were fun, and there were other things that I was interested in, and so it just fell by the wayside. The seed was sown, and it didn't grow. It didn't grow. And what's really interesting is that literally just, I don't know how long after, whether it was weeks or months, it was in that same year, I was 13 years old, that was the very first time I ever did the Ouija board. And so I'd encountered Jesus, and then just after that, I got into the occult. And so, yeah, I can look back on that now and go, I see what happened there. Anyway, so that was the very first time we went out into a car, and I was with some older boys. There was me and a friend, and they got a Ouija board out, and we started doing the Ouija board, and it totally freaked us out, completely freaked us out. And I remember going to our history teacher, and because we knew she was a Christian, and telling her that sorry, I'm just gonna have my cup of tea, and telling her that we'd done the Ouija board, and her answer was, go away, read the Bible, pray, you'll be fine. So that was her answer, and so we did. We took a Bible, we read a bit of the Bible, I've no idea what it was, prayed, and that was it. We were fine. We weren't worried anymore. But that was the first ever time that I did the Ouija. And so over the coming years, I became more and more interested in the occult. I was very interested in ghosts. Aliens did come into it somewhere. I had an interest in aliens, but that never really took off that much for me. Crystals, I got into crystals, and I was very interested in astrology. I actually started doing astrology classes at the age of 17, I believe. In fact, I might have been younger than that. I might have even been, I think I was 16. Yeah, I think I was 16, maybe even 15 when I started getting into astrology. My auntie and I attended a class. We were actually being taught how to read charts and how to read the stars. And then from that, I then started looking into witchcraft. Now, there was and there still is actually, it's still there. There's a shop in my hometown, which is a crystal shop. And in this shop, there's a lot of crystals, obviously, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff in there as well. So there was an awful lot of esoteric books and books on witchcraft and all the kind of new age kind of books that you can get, tarot and all of that stuff. And they sold tarot cards. And I used to love this shop. And I used to go in the shop every opportunity that I got, and I'd wander around. Never had any money, you know. I had a little bit of pocket money because I wasn't really working that much. I was still at school. But I'd always go in the shop, and I used to chat to the guy that worked behind the desk who I was fascinated by, because he always reminded me of a fairy. Okay, so he looked very much like a fae man, you know. He was very just a really interesting looking guy, and I always used to believe that he'd come from the fairies or something. So he really did kind of suit the, you know, the crystal shop. Anyway, I picked up this book, The Beginner's Guide to Witchcraft, I think it was called, and it was a very small book. It was only about that big, and I remember buying this book and taking it home, and I started to read this book, and I'll never forget the very first time I started to read it. I think I got to like page 2 or 3, and something inside me just felt like this was wrong, and it made me, I had this kind of real nervous feeling in my gut right here, and it was like something's not right about this. And so it made me really uncomfortable, and so I put it down and I didn't read it. I carried on with other stuff that was going on, but I left that book to one side and I didn't touch it. And then about 6 months later, time scale again, long time ago, not sure of the actual time scale. I don't think it was that long. It was between 6 months and a year later. I picked it up again and I started reading it, and that was it. I just totally soaked it all up. And I didn't get that feeling anymore. I didn't feel it was wrong. I didn't feel like there was anything wrong with this. In fact, it felt right. It felt really right to me. And everything in this book made sense. I knew a bit about the Bible. I knew a bit about the teachings of the Bible. And there was a lot of things at that time in my life when I didn't understand stuff. I didn't like some of the teachings of the Bible. I didn't believe them. I was like, well, I don't agree with that. And I don't like this. And I don't agree with that part. And so I'd convinced myself that I believe in God, I believe in a God, I believe in the divine, but I don't believe in the Christian God. I'm not interested in the Christian God because I can't understand why the Christian God would do this, that, and the other. And so for me, it was like, no, I'm just not going to go there. I'm not interested. I'm going to believe what I want to believe, you know, and actually that's one of the things about witchcraft that was very attractive to me, you know, was that actually I was very, very interested in nature. I loved being outside. I loved being in the forest, and I love wildlife. I also had a growing interest in fairies, and so for me, Wicca was something that just resonated. It was something that tapped into something in me that had this hunger for mystery and magic. It made sense of the seasons. It made sense of the natural cycles of the earth. I remember gaze up to the stars and kind of get lost in my own little world. There was a sort of fantasy world going on inside my head, and it tapped into all of that. And so when I really did pick up this book on Wicca and I started to devour it effectively, it made absolute sense to me at the time, because actually it fed into something within me that was feeding, you know, something within myself that that wanted what I wanted. And so it just worked for me at that time. It really resonated with me. And I was interested in magic. And my walk, that was really the beginning of my walk with Wicca. I became a hedge witch, and I never joined a coven. And I'm not going to delve into that in a big way in this video, because there's actually a number of videos that I've got in mind for looking at witchcraft. So I'm not going to go into the ins and outs of witchcraft in this one. I really just want to share my testimony. I did spells for my loved ones. So I made a talisman for my brother, and he used to carry it around with him. And I gave it to him when he was doing his exams, and he passed with flying colours. You know, spells for a new house. And we ended up with a new house. There was a whole bunch of stuff that I did that, you know, I saw the fruit of effectively. And so what this did was it then cemented in myself actually that this was working, you know, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I saw myself as a white witch. I was a good witch. I didn't do black magic. That's what I told myself anyway. But there was a number of times where, you know, I mean, I was quite happy to tell people that I was a witch. I was very much a witch. This is what I would tell people. And yeah, it was who I was. That was my identity. And I used to wear a pentagram, like on a cord here, and I always wore my pentagram. And through my walk, you know, through what I did with Wicca, I got interested in past life regression. I did meditation in order to look at my past lives. I did candle magic, crystal magic. I used herbs. I did tarot. I started to get into psychometry, where you hold a piece of jewelry and you're able to read something about somebody. I used to invite spirits into my spells, so I would invite various different gods and goddesses, depending on what the spell was and or what time of the year it was. I was obsessed with fairies, and I used to go looking for fairies regularly. I'd often talk to the fairies. I believe there were fairies everywhere, and it really did show in the fact that everybody used to buy me fairies, which very interestingly used to fall on the floor and break, which was really interesting. Actually, it was very interesting because I had all these fairies, but somehow they ended up on the floor. Maybe God was telling me something, but anyway. So I was very much into the spirit realm. I was very interested in the spirit realm. I believe there were spirits. I had a number of experiences with ghosts, which just again kind of cemented this worldview that I had. And when I was doing my spells, I would visualize this blue sphere all around me. So I would do this at the beginning of every spell that I did. Every time I did any magic, I would always do this. I would take quite a lot of time over this, and I would really kind of put that energy, sort of, and my energy would, I thought anyway, would this visualization of this blue light would protect me effectively. However, what became clear as the years went on was that actually as I was delving into all of this stuff, I was opening doors that I didn't understand. There were things beginning to happen around me. I had an out of body experience at a time. I fell pregnant at the age of 21. 20. I was 20 when I fell pregnant. And during pregnancy, I actually had an out of body experience, which was really scary. Actually, it really did. Yeah, it was pretty freaky. I didn't leave my body completely. Actually, my head was still attached, but it was just a very odd experience. And again, I'm going to look at that in a later video. I also had a cat on my bed. I was laying in bed one morning and I felt a cat jump up on my bed. I thought it was my cat because I had a cat. I actually had a black cat, funny enough, called Merlin. But Merlin was actually in the lounge and I'd closed the door and I'm laying there and I kind of opened my eyes and I'm like, how did the cat get in here? Because he's shut in the lounge. And so I sit up, I look at the end of my bed and there's nothing there. But I very clearly felt a cat jump up on my bed. And you know when they do the kind of pummeling, kind of the pawing thing, you know what they do when they get themselves comfortable? Well, it was doing that. And I sat up, I looked at the end of my bed and there was nothing there. So that happened. I then gave birth to my son, who's now 21. So this was some time ago. I split up with my son's dad when my son was only 6 months old, and it was shortly after that that I was in a very bad place. All of this had been happening. We split up. I got very depressed. I had postnatal depression, which we already knew at this point. I was already being treated for it, but I would then go out and I would party when my son went to his dad's. I would go out and party and I started taking drugs. And I had smoked weed, actually. That's one thing I had forgot to mention. Not during my pregnancy. I'd actually given it up at that point. When I started to go out partying, I started taking ecstasy and I'd take it quite often. If we went out partying, I'd take it. So really all of this stuff is kind of escalating, you know, the magic and all of that, and then I end up taking drugs, which by the way was something I said I would never do. So for me to then have a baby and then take it was, I mean, I look back at it now and I think it was actually very strange because I would never, I was so against it. I was not interested. A lot of my friends did it and I used to say, no, not interested, I don't want to take it. Because I knew the dangers of it. I knew you could take something on one night and then not wake up. You know, you could literally just take it. You don't know what's in it. For me, with weed, it was like, well, it's natural. What's the harm of it? You know, I do feel very different about that now. But at the time, I didn't feel like that. You know, for me, it was something that was natural. What's the harm? And so I started to become very much a party girl when my son wasn't around. And again, you know, you're out, you're taking drugs, you're partying. I was just getting worse. I was just going downhill. I was just really plummeting. I was becoming more and more disturbed. And again, I continued doing the spells, and I began to bring him up in this worldview. We would go looking for fairies together in the woods, and I would read cards and all kinds of stuff. And it got to the point where I was becoming more and more depressed and uncomfortable with my surroundings. I was oppressed, actually, I think is the word. There were spiritual things going on in my house. I would see things. And I would constantly regularly feel that there was a presence, that there was an evil presence around me. It was actually quite oppressive. It wasn't very nice. I knew that my head was not in a good place. I knew that all the stuff that was going on in my house, I didn't like it anymore. I didn't really. It's a weird kind of paradox, because on the one hand, there's that part of me that really didn't like it, but in the same way that you will watch a horror film because it excites you even though it scares you, there was that part of me that just wanted to keep doing it. It was an addiction, actually. It was that hunger for something supernatural that I was reaching for, that I was hungering for, because there's that God-shaped hole inside of me that has been designed to know Jesus. But I didn't realize that at the time. And so this God who loves me, that I have rejected, I haven't got time for that God. I haven't got time for him. But I have got time to sit and do the Ouija board and my tarot cards and speak to the fairies and do candle magic and crystal magic and go looking for ghosts and all kinds of stuff. I've got time for that, but I don't have time for God. Why would I have time for God? So that's really where I was at, was this real kind of, I'm going to do what I want to do, because why would I want to do what you want me to do? Because I don't like what you want me to do. And so, but what I was doing was just crashing and burning. I mean, it was just ridiculous. I mean, I got to the point where, yeah, it was not good. It was not good. I met a Christian, and in fact, what was interesting, there were actually a number of people in my life that just suddenly appeared. There was a guy who I went to school with, And he was the last person that I ever, oh, I've got a bit of cramp in my leg. He was the last person that I ever would have imagined would have accepted Jesus. Just, I never would have ever have guessed that he would have become a Christian. He was the guy at school that played practical jokes on people. He was always in trouble. He'd heard from one of our mutual friends that I'd been taking drugs, and he, I think, had been a Christian for about a year. I'd heard that he was a Christian, and I think I nearly fell off my chair because I couldn't believe that he'd become a Christian, because it was so alien. It was just so weird. And he sent me this really lovely letter, and I remember he told me about what Jesus had done in his life. And you know, I read this letter and I just remember thinking, oh, that's really nice, but that's you. I'm not interested. Yeah, I'm just not interested. I thought it was a nice thing to do, but I was just like, no, it's not where I'm at. I'm not interested. Why? No. And I don't think I kept the letter. I think I probably put it in the bin or something. I don't know. I don't know what happened to it, but I know that my heart wasn't in the place. It wasn't in the right place to hear the message that he sent me. There was this other girl that again had sent me, I think she gave me a little leaflet, like a little tract or something. She was really sweet, and again, I kind of was just like, yeah, whatever. Nice girl, don't mind hanging out with you, but I'm not interested. And then this other girl came into my life, and she was amazing. And I remember we used to go out clubbing, and we'd all be like dead on our feet. Well, I don't know how many pills we popped, but we'd be dead on our feet. She'd be up there dancing her butt off, and she had all this energy. And I never forget, I think it was maybe the second or the first or the second time I met her. And I was like, what is your secret? How do you stay this alive? Because I knew that she didn't take drugs. You know, she'd already said that she didn't take drugs. And I was like, what is your secret? What are you doing? And she said, it's God. And I just remember like, what? What are you on about? She's a Fruit Loop. Anyway, but I loved her to bits, and we became really good friends. And, you know, we'd have conversations, but she invited me to church on a number of occasions. But again, you know, I used to say, I love you, you know, I really want to hang out with you, and I love you to bits, but it's just not me. I'm not interested. I actually started going to a Buddhist temple in my hometown, which was actually a house, but anyway, I always thought that was a bit strange. But it was this guy, this really old guy, this old kind of Buddhist dude who used to do these meditation, used to go and meditate with him, and he was a Zen Buddhist. He was quite old. He must have been in his 80s, I think. And he was lovely. He was really lovely. And I remember going and doing this kind of meditation with him. I used to go, well, I went a number of times, because at that point, a lot of the mindfulness stuff was just beginning. Okay, so now mindfulness is everywhere, right? But at that time, Buddhism was something that was just on the, you know, people were beginning to really get interested in Buddhism, if I recall anyway. And mindfulness wasn't huge like it is now, but it was, people were beginning to get interested in it, and they were beginning to talk about the benefits of meditation. And so I thought, right, well, I'm just going to go and give this a go. And so I did a bit of meditation, and I remember having a vision of, I'm not even sure what it was. I mean, I remember I was sitting in my living room and I was meditating, and all of a sudden I had this vision of this green being, and it just placed this leaf on my forehead. It just kind of placed this leaf. It was all green, and it took this oak leaf and it just placed it on my forehead. And then I was just like awake, because it was so vivid, you know, it was a real vision in my head. And I was like, oh, what's that all about? But I was really excited, because it was like, oh, this stuff's like really cool. I'm going to carry on meditating. And so I did. And I remember once there was a time when I was in the shower and I'd been meditating, and I just didn't think of anything. I literally had nothing in my head except the feeling of the shower. And there was something about that was very satisfying, but at the same time unnerving. And I remember it it was a very strange feeling that I was like, I'm not worrying about anything. I'm not thinking about anything. There was just nothing. It was like my brain had kind of almost switched off and was just dealing with whatever was going on in that moment. So the shower. But again, not even that. It was very, very strange. And I remember, yeah, there was definitely a mix of emotion because I was kind of like, well, after the fact, obviously, because at the time I wasn't thinking of anything, but when I thought about it afterwards, it was very much, it was a very odd sensation. I attended some Buddhist classes, Buddhist meditation classes in another place as well, and so it was something that I was starting to get into. But again, all of this spiritual stuff was still going on around me. And I got to the point where I hit rock bottom. I really did hit rock bottom, and it didn't matter what I tried to do, nothing would change it. There was definitely an air of constant discomfort in my house. I remember feeling like there was a presence in my house, and I was scared. I was really scared. This was no longer fun, and I didn't want it to continue. I got, I was depressed. I was anxious. I wasn't being a good mum. I was broken. I was absolutely broken, and nothing I tried made a difference. Nothing changed it at all. And I remember I sat on my bed one night and I just cried out to God. I cried out to God and I said, God, if you are real, please help me because I cannot do this by myself. And I remember I knew who I was crying out to. I was crying out to the Christian God. That's who I was crying out to. I wasn't crying out to any other God. It wasn't the God or the goddess of Wicca. It wasn't anything to do with Buddhism. I knew exactly who I was talking to. And the second that I cried out to him, this feeling of complete love just enveloped me from my feet all the way up my body. It just absolutely just penetrated every part of me. It was like just love. That's the only way that I can describe it. It was love. And I sat on my bed and I knew that God was real. I knew that he was real. And I literally just cried with joy. I just remember being so filled with joy that yeah, I was just full of it. I just cried with joy. And I called my friend the following day, and I said, "Can we go to church?" And I think she fell off her chair. She was so pleased. She was like, "What? We want to come to church?" Like, yeah, can we go to church, please? And so she took me to church. And I remember calling her a few days later because I just had all this joy. I had no idea. It was just amazing. I had just complete peace. Everything that was going on in my house just ceased. It just ceased overnight. Literally everything. I didn't have the feeling that there was something in my house anymore. I didn't see things. It was just gone. All of it gone. And I remember I phoned up my friend and I said to her, I said, I don't understand what's happening. And she said, what? I said, well, I said, I just keep giggling. You know, I've just got this, but it's joy. It's not like uncontrollable giggles or anything. It's just this kind of like welling up inside me, this joy. And she said, that's the Holy Spirit. And I'm like, the what? What's the Holy Spirit? Because I had no idea. I didn't know any of this stuff. You know, this was like completely alien to me. So I had no idea. Didn't even know at this point, really, um, you know, really who Jesus was. I knew that Jesus was real. And I knew that if he had something to do with God, that I wanted to know Jesus. But at this point, I hadn't really known I had that experience, and I had heard the gospel when I was 13 years old, and at that moment in time I had accepted him. However, I then turned my back on him. And so at this point, she's saying to me, this is the Holy Spirit, and I'm like, I've got no idea who the Holy Spirit is. And so it's like, okay, I need to find out. And so yeah, the rest is history, basically. I mean, that was 18 years ago, and God, in his grace and his love and his mercy, you know, he absolutely saved me from that. And it was so obvious. This is the thing. It just like that, everything stopped. You know, and then he took me through this period of, and again, I'm still being sanctified, you know, this period of sanctification. You know, I'd love to tell you guys that the drugs stopped right then, that I became a model Christian there and then. No, that didn't happen. It didn't happen. I was really, it was a period of getting to know Jesus, understanding what that means to know Jesus, understanding that actually I'm now made righteous through the blood of Jesus. But also that there are things in my life that actually aren't important anymore, you know. And actually, I remember I struggled with a number of things to start with, because I begun to realize that there were things that I was doing, things that I was, you know, I was still having sex before marriage, um, and you know, other things that actually I believed that generally gradually over time were revealed to me. And you know, God very gently convicted me of those things. Some of them I fought harder than others, but you know, over time, God showed me who He is, and who, you know, revealed Himself to me. And I am so grateful. I really am. I'm so grateful. I just wanted to share that with you guys, and I really look forward to sharing more of my life with you. If you're watching this because you're in the New Age or you're in Wicca, I really want to encourage you. Jesus loves you. He really loves you, and the freedom that you have in Jesus is like nothing. It is like nothing else. Okay? If you are struggling with spiritual oppression, if you are struggling because you have opened doors to things you do not understand, okay, the Bible tells us we have an enemy, and that enemy is real. Okay, that enemy's name is Satan, and he's absolutely real. Okay, and I experienced it very, 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 very strongly. Um, 18 years, 18 years, and I'm still here. All right. So I just want to share that with you guys. I love you guys so much, and I look forward to seeing you guys soon. Take care, guys.